Good evening and welcome to Voices from the Village. My name is Louis LaFortune. I'll be your host this evening. And our show tonight is the United Nations and the United Nations Association. This year, we're observing the 70th anniversary of the United Nations, the founding of the UN. It was founded on October 24th, 1945, very shortly after the end of World War II. In an effort to help to create an organization in which the nations of the world could cooperate instead of going to war. That was the dream and the mission of it, and it's been more or less successful at that over these 70 years. It began with 51 members. Today it has 193 members, the United Nations. The UN won the wrong sheet. The UN has a structure. It has 6 principal organs. The General Assembly is the deliberative body, which makes decisions. The Security Council entertains and passes resolutions concerning peace and security. The Economic and Social Council promotes international economic and social cooperation and development. The Secretariat, probably the best known, is provides for studies, information, and facilities needed by the United Nations. The International Court of Justice is the primary judicial body. And finally, although it's inactive since 1994, the United Nations Trusteeship Council. Major agencies of the UN include the World Bank Group, the World Health Organization, the World Food Program, UNESCO, and UNICEF. The UN's most prominent officer is the Secretary General, who's currently Ban Ki-moon. The UN won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2001, but it is not without controversy. At the beginning, the decision to admit the Republic of China rather than the People's Republic of China, that is mainland China, was very controversial. So when we say the Republic of China, we're talking about the government on Taiwan, and that was changed it took decades for that to be changed. The so-called police action of the Korean War was extremely controversial. Russia objected to it, and that is the Soviet Union at that time, and somehow they were neutralized, and the UN went ahead with it anyway. And then there have been the attempts at peacekeeping, some of which have been very successful, but others which were very controversial. The failure to stop the aggression in Serbia and Rwanda and Syria are the most well-known examples of the failure of the peacekeeping efforts. In spite of all that, the UN's mission is to foster world peace and the health and welfare of the citizens of the world. So it's a magnificent mission. And of course, anything, from my own point of view, anything that ambitious is going to run into problems. So we should expect that kind of problem. So tonight, we're going to be hearing from 3 members of the local UNA, the United Nations Organization, the United Nations Association of the United States of America was created to support the work of the United Nations. And we have with us tonight 3 members of the UNA of Santa Cruz County. So I'd like to start with you, Pat Arnold. And you are the co-chair of the UNA of Santa Cruz County. And thanks for being here. Next, we have Dennis Etler. Mm-hmm. You are a member of the local board. True. The UNA board.
Yes, I am.
You are also the director of education for the UNA of Santa Cruz County. And in your spare time, you're a professor of anthropology at Cabrillo College.
Semi-retired.
Semi-retired,
so
okay.
I don't have too great a course load at this point.
It impresses me that you do all these things. And on my immediate right, Jean Peraino is the treasurer of the local Santa Cruz County United Nations Association. Okay, so I just want to make that clear that there are 2 separate organizations. There's the United Nations, which is an international organization, again founded in 1945, and the UNA, the United Nations Association, which supports the work of the United Nations in many ways. So Pat, how does that? What does the UNA do? How does the UNA support the work of the UN?
And it tries to make it more effective in the U.S. Any bills that pertain to funding the UN are the bills that we support. So even though we're a nonprofit group, we can support bills of that sort. And a lot of the work that we do locally is to help UNICEF, because we have a little store where everybody is a volunteer. It's at 903 Pacific, right across the street from the community television. And it's just run by volunteers, and the money that is made as a profit we give to UNICEF.
And UNICEF is the United Nations International Children's Emergency Fund.
Right.
Right. Which I learned, and because I think we're all of an age, we all remember collecting pennies or coins.
The little orange boxes.
Right, during Halloween trick-or-treating.
Which still goes on.
Which hasn't ended, still done,
Right.
yeah. And so kids carry this little orange box and they ask for money, coins, or
And it can be
dollar
put
bills these days.
and it can be put into Coinstar, so it's really easy for parents. Don't have to bring it to our store or anything like that. There's a place in the supermarkets that's Coinstar, and you just push to UNICEF, so the money can be automatically counted, and they don't have to count all the pennies. That's a big plus.
And UNICEF is the Children's Emergency
They
Fund.
fund.
So what is the work of UNICEF?
It's primarily to help children in areas where there's a great distress and need, and hurricanes, floods, international, even in the U.S. Occasionally, but where the need is greatest, providing tents and educational materials as well. It's been very effective.
Okay. How did you get involved with the UNA, and why do you've been in this position for many years, why do you continue to support this organization?
Well, it is a wonderful organization with wonderful people in this community that support it. I personally have always been active, was more active in the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom until the former president who had started, Steve Ross, who had started this chapter, died of AIDS. And I was just a member, but they needed a leadership person, so I stepped in and never stopped.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
That was quite some time ago, about 20 years ago, I guess. 15, maybe 15, I'm not sure exactly.
Well, your dedication is noted. I've watched you do this myself for a long time. Dennis Etler, you're again the Director of Education for the local UNA. How did you get in? Well, what does that job entail? And then just continue answer how did you get involved with the UNA, and why do you support the work of the United Nations?
Yeah, well, as Director of Education, I'm supposed to promote the work of the local association, within the educational community, and reach out to the schools and whatnot, and promote our programs. We have as we'll be discussing, we have a litany of ongoing events that occur annually. So as for how I got involved with this, it really goes back to my childhood. My great aunt Ruth was a great advocate of the United Nations, and she actually wrote a book called Understanding the United Nations, which was used in the New York City school system to teach, secondary school students about the United Nations. So it's really part of my family heritage. And I, of course, agree with the basic intent of the United Nations. It's an international body, try to bring together the people of the world to work in unison with one another. Of course, there are many challenges to get that accomplished and hurdles to overcome, but so I'm dedicated to principles as outlined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which extends beyond the political rights that we generally focus on to, the basic human rights of adequate shelter and nutritional food and education and health care, that should be available to all the citizens of the world. And we still have a lot to do in that regard. So, I'm very much in favor of the goals of the United Nations and want to help do what I can to promote them.
Okay, all right, thank you. Jean Peraino, you are the treasurer of the local board, of the local UNA for Santa Cruz County, and a board member, I imagine. How long have you been involved with the UNA, and why did you get involved, and why is the work of the UN important to you?
I guess I got involved because I knew Pat from some other organization. And I think just cutting to the quick, for me, since the 70s, I became more conscious of organizations that had it was not only local, national, but international in terms of the UNA, and that suits my politics.
Okay, all right. So, in line with your values, all right. So, one of the major things that the UNA does, the United Nations Association of the USA, and by the way, that's unausa.org if you wanted to look that up. It's easy to remember. I went to their website today and I watched a video or two about the Global Classroom program of the UNA. This is the national organization, which of course you support in your work. And this is done in schools. I'm a former high school teacher, and although I didn't participate in it myself, what happens is that teachers who decide to get involved with this program do this program in their high school, and then there's a competition, correct, where they try to win the right to go to the United Nations in New York and participate in this program called the Model UN, right, which is actually held in the chambers of the United Nations. So we're going to watch a little short video about this, about the Model UN, the Global Classroom Program. This video is 3 minutes long. Global Classrooms is an innovative educational program that engages public middle school and high school students in an exploration of current world issues through interactive simulations and curricular materials. Global Classrooms cultivates literacy and leadership as students explore important topics such as peacekeeping, sustainable development, and human rights. So again, we see these young people participating in this simulation. So they take on the roles of the representatives of countries and meet together and try to iron out their differences. So let's roll that now. This is the Global Classroom video.
It's up to the country. They can make the decision.
We can't have peace unless both sides want to have peace. Austria.
The United Kingdom. Philippines.
The Russian Federation.
Today, Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice spoke to a model UN forum which is designed to teach teenagers about diplomacy.
I think you have a better sense of how hard it is to make all of the trade-offs in diplomacy, how hard it is to reconcile the interests of different parts, and perhaps you have a little bit more understanding for people who are trying to make good decisions in international relations.
I've gotten to know so much about world politics and international relations.
It's your chance to learn how other people think and how other countries work and how their governing systems function.
This is a very diverse group of kids from all around the world, and it's interesting how we all relate to each other.
how to speak, how to debate, how to present yourself, how to think through an argument.
Jordan, Lebanon, Slovenia.
It seems as if the resolution fails to touch on a lot of important and vital subjects.
It gives students the opportunity to network with each other. And I believe that networking is the best way that you can have any type of global conflict resolved.
We should not use any forceful measure unless pushed to the corner where we have no alternative but that.
We are the only resolution that is really talking about documents that are already existent.
Their government is against torture, but they turn their head and look the other way when torture does happen.
UNA USA, through their global classrooms, provide young people with communication and leadership skills, an understanding of international affairs, and most important, they help to strengthen their voices in shaping those world affairs. The more young people know of other cultures and international issues, the more they bring understanding and tolerance to the world at large.
So the short video about the Global Classrooms program of the United Nations Association, the UNA, and the Model UN. And I think maybe I gave the wrong impression. No, as you corrected me, Pat, it's not just in New York City. So talk about that.
Yes, it's in most cities, and many high schools have a Model UN club. Mm-hmm. It's like a debating club, and they use and learn these skills. And then they actually have meetings with other schools. One thing that's been done recently here in the Northern California is to have a intergenerational Model UN, and that's coming up in October. It's quite exciting.
Okay. Has any of you participated in this? I know you're not high school teachers.
No, we sent a few people. There was a wonderful Model UN at the UCSC, and the one that helps to teach it is on our board, Kelsey Hill. And she took a large number of people up to the Model UN, intergenerational Model UN last fall it was. And this is going to be in October.
In October, okay. Anybody else want to comment on the Model UN before I move on?
Well, I seem to remember attending one a number of years ago in Watsonville, and if they're still functioning, I'm not sure, but the Watsonville High School won all kinds of national awards. I mean, there were cases of awards displayed, so there were whoever the facilitator was.
The teacher was great. I forget his name, but I think he's
gone.
Retired now.
Okay, I don't have that name, so.
Yeah.
Okay, but yeah, Watsonville High distinguished itself. And Santa Cruz High School here has a program, you believe?
Yes, I believe they do.
Okay, all right. One of the major, I think you mentioned this earlier, one of the missions of UNICEF is to provide clean water. As you said, shelter, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. These are basic human needs which are defined in the Charter as rights, and that everyone has the right to a safe place and a roof over their head and adequate food, and especially clean water. And in our world today, many people, many millions of people do not have clean water. There is a program, so we're going to watch a little short video here about the UNICEF Tap Water Project, and this involves, I'm not really clear about how it works, but you could, there is a website you can access, it's the UNICEF App Project, APP app, and you can find out more about it there. But we're going to watch this short video about how using, or rather by not using your cell phone, you can contribute to this effort to provide clean drinking water for the children of the world. So let's watch that one now. It's 1.5 minutes. It's the UNICEF Tap Water Project.
We're obsessed with our cell phones. Sometimes for good reasons. Other times, we check for likes, and check, and check. Or read intriguing articles about, well, never mind. And have you been out to dinner lately? We think we can't live without our phones. So why don't we use them to help provide something people actually can't live without? Clean water. At UNICEFTapProject.org, you can do just that. Give clean water to a child in need by taking a challenge to not touch your phone. The longer you go without your phone, the more you can help UNICEF put children first by providing them with clean water. 15 minutes could help provide a child with clean water for a day. Every minute counts, so keep going. When you can't resist any longer, our sponsors will make a donation to support the UNICEF TAP project based on the time you went without your phone. At this point, you can make an even bigger difference by donating yourself and challenging a friend to beat your time. As little as $5 could help provide a child with clean water for 200 days. The fact that millions of children still live without something as basic as clean water is hard to comprehend. So take a moment to reflect by going without something far less vital than water, your cell phone. Go to UNICEFTapProject.org.
UNICEFTapProject.org. So check that out. And I confess I did not subscribe to this, but I will when I get home. And it's somehow, by not using your phone, certain sponsors of this program will donate will donate money to this Clean Water Project. So it sounds like a very clever use or non-use of cell phones, which virtually everyone has now. So very, very innovative.
Yeah, it sounds great. And it's something that I don't think we were actually aware of. So it's great that you brought that to our attention.
Well, good.
I think we might want to
This
promote
modern world.
I think you might want to, yeah. Well, we have to reach out to the youth, and we're all learning here. So I'm glad I found that.
But another thing that UNICEF does is to collect the little orange boxes. And we do that here locally, trying to get them out to the schools. So if any school doesn't already order them, they can order them through our local UNA or go to our website.
All right, great. Another thing I learned about the about the United Nations, while doing research for this program, was the International Labor Organization. And this actually predates the UN by many years, by 20-something years. And the International Labor Organization was an attempt to make an international organization that looks out for the rights of working people, of labor. It was established in 1919, even before, or at the time of the beginning of the League of Nations, which was the predecessor to the UN, which did not succeed. But the International Labor Organization still exists today and is an important part of the work of the United Nations. So we're going to watch, again, another short video here about the ILO. This is about 2 minutes and 20 seconds. So let's have a look at that and see what's going on with the ILO.
These are some of the thousands of migrants lured by the promise of a better life in oil-rich Gulf countries. The media has turned around to the fact that migration is a huge story. However, there's still a lot that needs to be done. What has been done so far is just a scratch on the surface.
ما بدي أكون قاسية بالحكم، بس بقدر أحكي أغلب التقارير اللي بتكون يعني خالية من المضمون. فارغة من المضمون ما فيها لا تكون معمقة.
It depends on the freedom of speech that they have, and unfortunately in some countries of the region it's very limited, and most of the news outlets are governed by certain policies.
It's quite risky. We have to cover up all the sides. We cannot go away with the victim's version. We have to call whoever has the other side. Sometimes they abuse us, sometimes they threaten us.
الإعلام لا يزال تحت سلطة أصحاب الأعمال وتحت سلطة الحكومات الخليجية التي هي بلا شك تسعى دائما لإخفاء الوجه الحقيقي للأعمال المهاجرة في منطقة الخليج.
Labor migration is still considered a hidden issue. It's not as prominent as, say, war zones and conflicts. In some cases, you see it as a trafficking or a smuggling story that comes to the light, but migration is so large and there are so many abuses that occur.
Good journalism is also about seeking the truth, doing it in a very responsible way, trying to let the voiceless speak and thinking very carefully about not putting them at risk.
The language of rights turns the debate from one, which you see a lot in the media now, of one of charity or pity. It's terrible what's happening to these people, it's really sad, let's give them some money, rather than these people are human beings and they have an enforceable right to be treated with dignity.
على الإعلاميين والإعلاميات أن يوسعوا نطاق التغطية بحيث تكون قضية العمال المهاجرين أيضا هي قضية العمال وحقوقهم في النظام الرأسمالي.
يعني نحن فعلا أمام معركة كبيرة، علينا أن نوعي الناس وعلينا أن نواجه أيضا السياسات الحكومية وسياسات أصحاب العمل.
I didn't get any of it.
Okay, so ILO, the International Labor Organization, that's ILO.org. That particular clip was about the issue of labor migration from the countries generally of Africa and, continents of Africa and Asia to the Gulf states, which are extremely wealthy because of their oil, and the massive labor issues that we hear about all the time in the Gulf states. Right, the abuse of labor in those states. You know, I'm talking about Bahrain and Saudi Arabia and these countries, right, which import massive massive amounts of labor.
Yeah, Dubai is going to be having the World Cup soon. I think in not too far down the line, but there's been a lot of scandal around that and the labor situation there.
Yes, right, and of course all these countries are very closely connected to the United States, and so the film, right, was decrying the lack of decent reporting about all of this, because we don't hear about this in the corporate media. No. It's just not reported. Right. So, do you want to comment any more about the migration issues?
It's just the worst. It's a terrible situation now.
It is terrible. Yeah. Okay. Yes, I'm being reminded that we do have a phone number here. This is a call-in show, and our number is 425-8848, extension 30, if you care to speak with our guests. Tonight, our show is about the United Nations and the United Nations Association, which supports the work of the UN. My guests tonight are members of the board of the local UNA here of Santa Cruz County. So if you want to give us a call, that's number again, 425-8848, extension 30. We welcome your phone calls. Lastly, before and we're going to talk about your upcoming celebration. Every year you do the UNA Day.
UN Day, yeah.
Okay, sounds like we have a call already. Hello, you're on the air. This is Voices from the Village.
Hi, my name is David, and I'm wondering, does anybody have any feelings about the Palestinians being left out of the UN from its onset? I'll take my answer off the air.
All right, great. Thank you. The question was about the status of Palestine in the United Nations. Now, weren't they last year granted observer nation status?
Yeah, they've been given observer nation status. And there's been a recent controversy about raising the Palestinian flag, along the flag posts that encircle the plaza, in front of the UN.
The UN headquarters in New York City.
The UN headquarters in New York City, where the flags of all the nations are displayed. And the Palestinian flag was unfurled, and to the objections of, a small coterie of states who support Israel and, basically don't want to see the Palestinians represented in any way. So I'm not quite sure whether the flag was actually raised because the U.S., which is the primary supporter of Israel, has a veto power, to basically scuttle any UN attempt to recognize the Palestinian nation. So the problem being, that even though the vast number of Security Council members support the Palestinian cause and Palestinian statehood, there are, intransigent powers such as the United States, which has a veto being on the Security Council, and a number of other, close allies of the U.S. and Israel who generally abstain. But, the U.S. and, a couple of, generally about 7 or 8 other, nations are the few holdouts when it comes to recognition of Palestinian statehood at the United Nations.
Mm-hmm. And this is an opportunity to I think, to talk about the anti-democratic structure of the governing council, right? So you have a Security Council with 15 members, 5 of whom are permanent members, right? And this
with veto power.
With veto power, right? And these are the United States, Great Britain, France, Russia, and
China.
Okay.
Yeah, and those were basically the victors
in World War II.
Of World War II, the major nations that met at Yalta and elsewhere, which set the foundation for the United Nations.
Right, and yes, and so while this is the way I look at it, while they subscribed to this idea of the United Nations, they didn't want to go too far and allow it to be, democratic, that is to have everyone have an equal say.
Yeah, well, at the time, of course, the world was still in turmoil, and there needed to be a certain element of stability. And of course, many of the nations in the United Nations of today didn't even exist. Now, there's definitely a call for reform of the United Nations, particularly the Security Council, with the addition of more permanent members. And I know China and Russia are very much in support of that. The U.S. is not, to my knowledge. The primary candidates would be India and Brazil, and perhaps Germany and Japan, even though I think there's still a lot of recriminations about, World War II that enter into that equation. But I know India and Brazil are being supported by China and Russia for being added to the Security Council with full, rights. And that would obviously change the complexion of the Security Council.
Right, and yes, and then it might, I know the General Assembly, which is all the nations, as you mentioned, has supported Palestinian rights many times in the past. There have been many resolutions passed, but they're always vetoed by the U.S.
Yeah, and generally speaking, Britain and France abstain because they don't want to sort of upset, the U.S., but they want to stay on the good side of things with the Palestinians. So, I don't see where that's going to really change in terms of the veto power of the major, nations on the Security Council. So, a lot of efforts that the United Nations does attempt, to do, get scuttled because of that. The U.S. probably has used the veto power in the Security Council far more than any other nation. I don't have any, hard facts on that score, but we could look it up. I'm sure that's the case.
Okay. Thank you for your caller. And again, we do have a number here, 425-8848, extension 30, if you wish to ask a question or make a comment about tonight's show. We're talking about the United Nations and the United Nations Association. So I want to move on to this last video, and it's the work of the World Health Organization. The World Health Organization was founded just 3 years after, or after the creation of the UN in 1948, and its headquarters are in Geneva, Switzerland. Its mission, of course, is to promote health in the world. And of course, we're talking about the concept of public health. You know, how do we get health care to the many peoples of the world? This video here is about the recent Ebola crisis that hit West Africa recently in the countries of Liberia, Guinea, and Sierra Leone, and how it affected that country. And also it points out the inadequate healthcare system in this area of the world. And the World Health Organization, part of their very important work is to try to address that lack of basic medical care in certain areas of the world. So we're going to meet a doctor named Philip Ireland. He is a Liberian doctor who was one of the 150 doctors in the entire nation of Liberia. That's all they have for a nation of 4.5 million people. And he contracted Ebola himself and survived it and lived to talk about it. So although many Liberian doctors did not live through that crisis. So we're going to watch that video right now. It's about 4.5 minutes long. Let's roll that.
If we are going to develop and get out of this, you need people from here who would stay behind and help with that. And I just felt from a very early time that I was one of those that would help with that. In Liberia, where you have about 4.5 million individuals, you have probably 150 doctors. It was a very, very intense headache. So intense that I saw flashes of lightning. And my heart was racing, I had a fever, and I said, probably this is not malaria because I've had malaria about 1,000 times. And it never presented that way.
When he came, and his son wanted to run to him as usual, he said, no, don't touch me. He told me, no one comes in my room to do anything.
Everybody played an important roles, but my mother played a very, very special role during my illness. She stayed, and she made her own personal PPE with ordinary gloves that the women used to do hair.
Every hour or so I would go and call him. We call him Sokonis, not Philip. So, Sokonis, yes, Mama. How are you? All right, Mama. The voice was slow and ebbing.
I remember when the WHO, CDC, and other bodies were spewing out the epidemiological graph about how many people would be infected and how many deaths would be expected. That showed us that if we didn't get our acts together, this epidemic might wipe us off of the face of the map. And since we had this one big enemy, Liberians just rallied together and became united, okay, and said, well, we're not going out like that. We can't let our guards down. We need to continue effective and quality monitoring. At the same time, we need to strengthen our health system because if you don't have the stuff to do your work, and then you have very meager salaries, it can be very, very unbearable to live in that environment. The first thing we need to do is to strengthen those things that we already have. That is the training of clinicians, retraining of clinicians, and paying them better. And the health centers are very, 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 very few, and then inadequate at the same time.
I'm not waiting for a new epidemic. We have epidemics that are going on here right now. HIV, malaria, tuberculosis. Ebola, the way it spread, the way it erupted, was part and parcel of having a weak healthcare system to begin with.
I think we should focus on diseases like malaria, because those are the diseases that create the conditions for diseases like Ebola to come. As we shift from quick impact solutions to long-term solutions, the kind of investment that will work really well will be to have Liberian health professionals trained in Liberia.
I think if there is any silver lining to Ebola, it's that it's drawn attention to what the healthcare system was like before Ebola here. If we improve the healthcare system in general, it's going to be the benefit of the Liberian people, all West Africa, and it's going to make an epidemic like this much less likely to occur.
It was miraculous because Liberia, we don't have the human nor infrastructure resource to defeat Ebola. But if we could do that with Ebola, we can do that with everything else.
A World Health Organization produced video about the Ebola crisis in West Africa. And again, the World Health Organization is a major function, a major agency of the United Nations, which promotes world health. Some striking information there about how few doctors there are in Liberia and the state of the public health system there. And the doctor himself, Dr. Ireland, said, you know, I knew it wasn't malaria because I've had malaria 1,000 times. It's not the kind of things that you apparently build a resistance to, so you can get it many times. And the need he stressed was to build a health system so that Ebola could not flourish. I want to mention a couple of things that I learned about the WHO. In 1958, the Soviet Minister of Health proposed that the WHO take on the task of eradicating smallpox worldwide. And 21 years later, in 1979, they achieved that goal. There is no smallpox in the world anymore. It's gone. And now similar campaigns are being waged against polio. Pakistan is the only country in the world that has reported cases of polio today, and they're working on that. And then malaria, of course, which is widespread, and that will be a much larger effort. But it is possible, and it's very encouraging to me, you know, who grew up with polio. You know, everyone talked about it, and the vaccine was a very new thing when I was a boy. And to see these efforts succeed, that we can actually eradicate these horrible diseases. 2 million people died of smallpox in 1958, and in those years, every year, they would 2 million people. So,
yes, well, the UNA is working strongly, as best you can, to eradicate malaria through a program called Nothing But Nets, so that money coming from UNA goes for netting, which is one of the best safeguards.
And it's also very inexpensive.
Yes.
Because it's a mosquito-borne disease.
Yeah.
Mosquito, and it happens at night, and if their beds are enclosed with a net, it just saves lives.
And I think we saw a shot in that video of a hospital ward, and there were nets.
There were nets there
right?
in the
we
hospital.
Saw they weren't.
It's an extremely cost-effective way to basically prevent the spread of malaria.
So we have a few minutes left, and we're going to run this video of that was made by Toby Tierman and edited by Matilda Rand, and it's about your UNA Day celebration here. I think it was in 2013, and so I think you're all in the video. Talk about that, though. You have another. You do this every year.
Every year, it's a requirement of every UNA group. And it'll be a street fair on Cooper Street. On October 24th was the actual UN Day. We always go to the closest Saturday, and it happens to be the 24th this time. So we're really excited that we're having a wonderful program again.
Okay, so we're gonna end it there, and we're gonna watch this video, and you will see more about the work or about your celebration. Hopefully people will be encouraged to come out. So thank you, Pat Arnold, And Dennis Etler and Jean Peraino, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thanks.
And we're going to roll this final video, and here we go. This is the UNA Day 2013.
I'm Pat Arnold, and I'm president of the United Nations Association here in Santa Cruz. Today is the 68th birthday, so we are having a street fair here in Santa Cruz. I was 20 when the UN was formed, and I thought it was a great idea, but I didn't like the fact that they didn't have China in the UN. It was Formosa, Chiang Kai-shek, that the US and Britain was supporting. And it took a couple of years before China was actually became a part of the UN, which made it a much more one-worldy. We have all kinds of different groups performing. Yes, we have the folklorico group and the Sons of a Beach, who are a ukulele club, and a Zimbabwe band. It's just a wonderful bunch of people who are donating their time so that people in Santa Cruz will have a birthday celebration for the UN. hundreds of people came to watch the folklorico dancers. The Barrios Unidos brought a display of a jail where many young men have been incarcerated. It's very moving if you go in to see it. The Indian Council was here with their food and some display. Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, some of the other groups, Avatar, a Compassion Project, Amnesty International, and the American Red Cross, and the Santa Cruz Sentinel has a big booth here because they gave us 2 wonderful free ads as a co-sponsor. And of course the United Nations Association has a wonderful booth here. We have the store that's right opposite the bus station. It's at 903 Pacific, Lower Pacific Avenue, right in Santa Cruz. We're open with volunteers from 11 o'clock till 5 o'clock every day except Sunday. In this whole country, about 68% of the people believe in the United Nations. It's important to have. Here in Santa Cruz, it's 98%. If people are interested, they could come to our store at 903 Pacific Avenue and join at that time. It's just $25 to be a member. The Raging Grannies will be singing pretty soon, and I'm a Raging Granny.
And this one is about a danger we all know, and we all know we have to do something about it right now. It's called the planet's hot. The planet's getting hot. We might defend the snot, but the world is on the spot. We're really in the soup, and here's the latest scoop. We shouldn't be underwater, cause the planet's getting hotter. It's true. Yes, it's true. The planet's hot. We can't pretend it's not. Whatever ever shall we do? Doodle-doodle-doo. Doodle-doodle-doo.
People came from all over, and from Watsonville and even San Jose. Be sure to come next year. We'll be in the same spot for UN Day.
Which is fine.
You don't normally have that many.
The video there, shot by Toby Tierman, edited by Matilda Rand of Community Television, of the 2013 UNA Day. And again, the 2015 UNA Day celebration will be in the same place, Abbott Square on Cooper Street in Santa Cruz, on Saturday. And so come on out, October 24th, if I didn't say that already. So thank you all for being here. Pat, Arnold,
Yes.
Final thought.
Final thought, there's too many. Thank you for hosting this. You brought up so many important subjects, and I hope that this gets wide coverage.
All right.
Yes, thanks for having us. You're a wonderful host. And just a reminder to come out to the UN Day. We also celebrate Human Rights Day in December, right after the annual holiday parade, generally speaking. And then, of course, in the spring, there'll be the International Women's Day celebration. So that's those are the three major events that we host, but we also are involved in other ongoing work locally. So come by and join in.
And Jean Peraino.
I just encourage everyone to familiarize themselves with this wonderful document, the Declaration of Human Rights.
And we have them available at our store.
And of course, come to the store and buy your UNICEF Christmas cards and gifts for the holiday season.
Okay. All right. Thanks again for joining us. And thank you for joining us here on Voices from the Village. This is produced by all volunteers, of course, here at Community Television. And we will see you next time on Voices from the Village. Good night.